All right, so now we're going to continue, and we're going to flip back over to the edit window, and let's listen to this drum part. I have a feeling you're not going to be too happy. Okay, it's pretty sloppy, isn't it? What we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to quantize this drum part. What we've got, you probably noticed from the names, we've got a kick drum part on the first track, snare drum part, closed and open hi-hats. And they're all a little bit out of time. It's especially noticeable if we play it along with the click track. First, let's try without the click track. You can turn the click on and off a number of different ways. You can scroll to where you can see that click track in either the edit or mix window, and you can mute it right there in the track. Or on the transport, you can turn the little metronome icon on or off. So here the click is on, and I'll toggle it off. Back on, off. Okay, let's rewind, and you can also do it this way. Click on, mute it, turn the click off. Oh, you know what? Take two. Got to turn the click back on here on the transport. Then we can mute it or unmute it in the track. Clicking, not clicking, clicking. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to solo just the kick drum. So remember, each track, whether we're in the edit window or the mix window, each track will have solo and mute buttons. Let's go back to the edit window, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to solo the kick drum. When I do, you'll notice that all these other tracks will be muted. Sure enough. The click track, not necessarily. The click track, you notice that the S is grayed out. It's solo safe so that it is available to click whether you're soloing or not. So let's turn the click back on in the transport. And now you can hear it clicking along with that less than perfect, much less than perfect kick drum part. All right, I'm going to do one more thing that's going to make the editing process go a little more smoothly. I'm going to click, you notice I have the Smart tool engaged, right? All three tools at once. The Trim tool, the Selector tool, and the Grabber tool. The way you do that is by clicking on this little bar that extends over and beside all three of them. There you go. That's the Smart tool. So I'm going to click right on this kick clip to highlight it. And then on the transport, I'm going to right click. If you don't have a right click on a Macintosh, you can command click on an icon. But most of the computers in our lab now have right-click buttons. So right-click right on that play button and choose loop. Now when I hit play, because this kick drum part is highlighted, it should loop back and play it over and over and over again. Let's see if that works. Yep, it's looping correctly. Okay, now you can tell the metronome is clicking on quarters, and the kicks are supposed to be happening on quarter notes too. Every beat should be a kick, and we can tell some of them are on or some of them are late. They're just kind of all over the place. So what we're going to do is quantize that kick drum. Now quantizing, just to review what that means, it means that we're going to move the notes. You can do this very easily with MIDI events. MIDI quantizing has been around forever. There are ways to quantize recorded audio now that work a little differently, a little more involved, but this particular tutorial is going to deal with quantizing MIDI. So when we quantize this kick drum part, we're going to move all of those MIDI events so that they line up on a grid. You'll notice we're currently in grid mode. We can see the measure numbers. If I were to zoom way in, we can see even in the first measure here, there's beat 1 of the first measure. Here's the second eighth note of beat 1, beat 2, the second eighth note, etc. So there are grid lines running down along this ruler, and what we're going to do is we're going to move the notes so that they line up a little more clearly with the grid marks. Let me zoom in. So here's our drum part, and I'm going to zoom way in so that we can see just one measure of music. Look right here on the first measure. You can see how late that first hit is and the second hit. Here's the bar line, the grid line rather. Way late, a little less late, but late still. Late again. Second measure, the first beat is close, but not quite. This one's a little early. You see how they're not quite lining up on the grid lines. When we quantize, there are several ways to quantize. If you quantize a region of notes, as we're going to do, if you quantize it to a value of 100%, everything will line up exactly on the grid line. Sometimes that's good. It'll definitely make this particular drum sound or drum part tighter, but sometimes it can also sound mechanical. So as we'll see in these little short lessons on quantizing, sometimes you can quantize 100%, or sometimes you'll quantize a little less to give it a little bit of a human feel rather than a mechanical, machine-like, perfect lining up the notes. All right, so here's how we do it. I have already highlighted this kick drum part, the region that was there, the clip, sorry, and then I double-clicked it to open it up, and you'll notice that when I double-clicked it, it opens in Notes view. Let's go back. Here's Clips view, and if I want to open up the MIDI editor, I can do it a variety of ways. I could highlight that clip and go to Window and open the MIDI editor, just like we did in last week's tutorial. Or another way, in working in Pro Tools, I can just take that grabber tool and double-click right on the clip to open up the MIDI editor for that part. All right, and when I do that, you'll notice all of these drum hits are already highlighted. If I were to click outside that range, you'll see that they will no longer be highlighted. Now they're not highlighted. I want to highlight them again with the grabber, the selector tool. Can drag across all of them to highlight them all. All right, let's highlight the kick drum part. We'll listen to it one more time. Pretty pathetic. Okay, rewind to the beginning and let's highlight them all again. And I'm going to go up to the event menu and we will choose event operations. And then when this little side window menu pops out, we'll drag over and we'll select Quantize. You notice there's a keyboard shortcut listed there. We'll select Quantize and the event operations window pops up and it's currently set to Quantize. What do we want to quantize? Note on, note off, preserve note duration, and then quantize to what sort of a grid. There are several settings here. I'm going to leave the defaults. We're going to quantize the note on, and we're going to preserve the note durations. These are all pretty short hits, and with a kick drum, whether we've written longer notes like this one or shorter ones, it's not going to make a big difference because there's such a short decay time on this kick drum anyway. So I don't need to worry about the notes off. So nor do I need to worry about preserving the note duration. Quantize to a grid. We know that this kick drum part is supposed to be hitting on every quarter note. So let's go ahead and set the grid for this quantization or quantizing to a quarter note. And then we have some options here. We could swing it. We could choose to include or exclude notes depending on how far or close they are to the grid lines. And we can change the strength, but we're going to leave all of that off. And let's just click apply. But before I do, I want to move a little bit, move this window a little bit so that hopefully you can see some of those notes jump, these notes up here, when I click apply. Yep, sure enough, they definitely moved. Let's close the event quantizing window, and now let's listen to the kick drum again. Much better, even with this long note coming up. They're all hitting right on the beat now and right in time with the metronome click. Let's listen to it without the metronome. Yeah, you can tell they're all in time now. There's still some variation in the velocity because I played this in live, tapping it on a keyboard. It sounds like I got a little lazy here on the last 4 bars, but that's okay. All right, so I'm going to close this editor window. And now we'll listen to the whole thing. I'm going to take it out of solo, and don't be surprised if it still doesn't quite sound right. Here we go. We'll zoom in so we can see where we are, see an overview of these 8 bars. And I'll rewind to the beginning, and let's go. The kick is very steady, and that just now seems to amplify how out of time the rest of the drums are. So what we'll do next, in the next tutorial, we're going to come back and we're going to look at those other drum parts and maybe learn a few new tips on how to quantize. But for now, let's pause, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. By the way, are you wondering what that sound is in the background? I'm working at home and my wife is in the living room coaching a soprano opera singer. So if you're wondering what that little singing sound is, no, you're not going crazy. You're not hearing things. It's on the recording. Sounds quite nice from here. I'm not sure how it'll sound in the background.